Hi there, Aussie music fans. Thanks for stopping by to hear the Silly Encore with the amazing cellist and composer Anita Quayle. I'm Saba, the host of this podcast. A few days ago, I spoke to Anita about her professional life and the many innovative projects in which she uses the cello in a more contemporary setting. Hence, the previous episode's focus was on innovation. We also discussed a few other topics, like classical music funding and the role of women in that scene. If you haven't yet, you should definitely check it out. You'll be amazed to find out what you can do with a cello these days. Today's encore is a little different. You'll get to know Anita's background and music preferences. And if you're a fan of great movie scores, this chat is definitely for you. So, without further ado, let me take you straight to Tasmania.
Yeah. No, I spent the first 12 years of my life there.
Okay.
So I grew up in a little place called Midway Point, which was about
Okay.
a half an hour drive south from the Hobart airport.
Okay.
So, of course, sort of surrounded by water on most sides. It's sort of a little island called Midway Point. My parents moved there from Melbourne.
Okay.
Originally, it was going to be just for 2 years, and they ended up staying 12.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it
Love
was,
adventure.
a great place for children, great place, safe place for children to grow up. And everyone in the street had kids the same age. So it was like this open door, open house policy. We just had kids flying in from front door to back door, throughout the whole street. So I think the parents felt really safe knowing that all the kids were going to be taken care of. So I
Yeah.
think that's probably why they stayed longer, to be honest.
Yeah, it really looked like a beautiful place and like so serene with the water and all the nature surrounding it. So yeah, but I was just wondering, and since you haven't been living there, maybe you're not so in touch with it anymore. But is there a lot of like a music scene in Hobart or in Tasmania itself?
It's getting much better. So since David Walsh and Brian Ritchie put together this incredible arts events program called Mona Festival, it's really put Hobart on the map globally now. So, and I think as a result of that, there is so much more about the arts and food and culture has sort of really expanded because of that festival. I think it's not been a festival that's been around for a while, but since it has started, it's really gathered in international recognition. So
Yeah,
it's really
and
helped to put
I've
Tassie on the
heard.
map.
Yeah. So you also in that interview with Greg for Australian musician, you said that the way your love for music and generally interest in it started was because your mom took you to the performances. So I was wondering whether it was because your family are a musical family, or was it just because your mom wanted to do something with you and there was not much else back then?
I think my mother has always had a love for classical music. So she plays piano by ear beautifully.
Okay. Wow.
So she had never had any formal training, could never read a note of music, but when she hears something, usually a classical piece of music, she can kind of figure it out on the piano by herself. So I think I probably got that from her, a sense of a fine ear for picking out melodies and things like that. But we had this incredible orchestra, the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra, and they would put on, basically it was like free lunchtime concerts for people on a Sunday, but it was really just to listen to their rehearsal processes and, rehearsing their kind of program for the next concerts coming up. So Mum would take me to those concerts probably from the age of 4 years old. So that's where I really got an awareness of what classical instruments are, and especially the string section, which I really sort of gravitated towards immediately. So my interest for that started from that age, from the age of 4.
Wow, 4 years old? At that age, I don't even think I knew what a cello was yet. And it's actually not that common that the passions that we have as kids would stay with us for the rest of our lives, let alone become our professions. So let's hear more about Anita's education. And she's also going to reveal whether playing the cello helped her image in high school. Well, I don't know if you know what I mean, but normally when you're in high school, you want to be cool. So, kids would go for like the guitar and everyone wants to be like in a rock band and stuff. And you kind of chose a completely different option and a completely different instrument. So I'm wondering how that went for you.
Yeah. Well, I guess because it had always been in the back of my mind that I really wanted to learn the cello, just because of the principal cellist of the TSO, the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra, I was so enamored by her, and she just looked like she had the best time doing what she was doing. So I really wanted to do that as well. Um, but it wasn't until high school that I had the opportunity to be able to hire an instrument through school.
Okay.
So the opportunity was provided for me only at the beginning of high school. So that's when I sort of pounced on the opportunity to sort of take it up. But all through high school, I was one of those left of center kids. I never really fitted into the cool group anyway. So the fact that I was playing a string instrument that was so uncool at the time, it didn't bother me. I was like, yeah, it's part and parcel of who I am, I guess.
Oh, so that was kind of your image. So it really
Yeah.
you. Yeah. So I'm the unpopular kid, so I'm gonna choose the unpopular instrument.
That's it.
And on that note as well, because I'm really interested in what the music education in Australia is like, or what it was like in your times as well. Because as far as I understand, you've been doing it for a long time, and things might have changed. But back when you were in high school, what was it like? Did you guys learn? Like, was it mandatory to learn to play an instrument, or was it more theory?
Not at the public school that I went to. Perhaps at some of the more of the private schools, it might have been a compulsory thing, but I wasn't sort of privy to that information, or I wasn't privy to that level of education when I was at that age. But I must say, through high school, I learnt. There was a teacher that would come to the school, so like a sessional teacher that would teach you one-on-one with your instrument. Music lessons in a class situation were pretty banal. Like it was just, this, hey, pick up a percussion instrument and just pick up your flute or your a recorder and let's play a song all together in unison. It was that pretty lame. So it wasn't until I got to senior high school. So there was an excellent music program for year 11 and 12 students in your senior secondary years. So I was able to study music performance and I was able to study music history. And so both of those subjects put me in good stead, good grounding to be able to be sort of at a level good enough to go to university. So that's so that would be the history of music back in 1988, 89 in high school. Not so great, but if you wanted to pursue music, to pursue an instrument of your own accord, there was help there to do that.
But it's the cello is not the only one that you play, as far as I understand. You also play the piano, correct?
I started on piano at the age of 6. So I had piano lessons for 4 years. And then I switched over to cello at the age of 12. So I feel like I had a really good grounding for pitch and for rhythm and for hand coordination. So I was able to transfer a lot of those skills from the piano onto the cello, which helped me to learn the instrument, pick it up a lot quicker.
When you hear about a musician who plays a string instrument like the cello, what do you normally associate it with? I'm thinking a symphony orchestra right away, maybe a grand concert hall, and probably a lot of Beethoven and Bach. But Anita's cellist career is quite different from that stereotype. So I didn't hesitate to ask why she's chosen a different, more modern path for a traditionally classical instrument. have you ever been a part of a symphony orchestra for like a longer, like just a musician on the payroll? Or because I can see that you are involved in a lot of different projects, but sort of on a, I would call it more freelancing basis. So you pick and choose your own
Yes.
project. So I was
Yeah.
wondering if you had ever formed a part of orchestra as just a session musician.
Um, no, I have not. Like I've done, smaller on sort of
Mhm.
ensemble work, but not in a big orchestra capacity. Not since I left Victorian College of the Arts, where we had our university orchestra where we would put on concerts and programs. But I learnt pretty quickly when I was there that playing classical music in an orchestra at that stage, where there wasn't that much else on offer
Mhm.
in Australia as far as the kind of programs that they were curating for concerts. And I was like, oh man, I don't think I want to play Tchaikovsky. I don't think I want to play Mozart or Haydn and playing the same repertoire, like every so often. Like I want to go out there and pave and a different way for not only myself but for being able to bring the cello into
Mhm.
different realms. So yeah, so the minute I left VCA, I think within that first 12 months I was in about 10 different bands in
Okay.
Melbourne,
Mhm.
and I was playing everything from blues music through to, like folk singer-songwriter, pop stuff. And then I sort of started meeting other string players who were doing a similar thing. And so we were like, oh, maybe we can
Mhm.
start a quartet and we can start doing um, uh, recordings for people's recordings, for CDs and things like that. So one thing led after the other, and before you know it, you're sort of immersed in this world where you get to kind of call the shots for the instrument that you're playing. So
Yeah, which is
it's
great.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was quite a liberating realization for me.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, do you prefer playing improvised music or do you like the rehearsed pieces, where you kind of like you've got them polished and
Yeah, I think both are valuable.
Mhm.
I think in improvisation, it teaches you to think on the spot and to be not only just to be thoughtful about the notes that come out before they come out, but yeah, it really teaches you to kind of think on your feet and to also be really aware of listening. Developing your listening skills to be able to to play and converse with others in a setting such as that. But then, to play concerts where you've rehearsed and you've really gone over the arrangements with a fine tooth comb. I think there's also much merit for that too, because
Mhm.
it teaches you about discipline and it teaches you about focus and also your decision making processes, especially concerning arranging music. All of those skills become a lot more. What's the word I'm trying to look for? Finely honed or finely, you know, tuned in. And it also helps you to do that stuff a lot faster every time you do a concert. And it's this, intricate detail involved in the arranging and then the rehearsal parts of it. Each time you do that, you get quicker at it and you get better at your decision making processes, which is a huge skill to have under your belt, especially when you're collaborating with people at a really professional level. They kind of expect that of you. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Okay, so we're going to slightly change the topic of our conversation now because Anita is really passionate about music and film. And she also knows the ropes in that particular genre. So if you love the epic movie scores as well, this part of the interview is right up your alley. So don't you skip it. And it looks like in all your projects that you do, well, maybe apart from your solo one, you're interested in like a intersection of different disciplines. So there's always like, there's not only music, there's film, like you said, and there's the dance and so on. So I'm kind of wondering, Does it mean that you think that music always transcends other things as well? Or is it because music on its own wouldn't be so interesting in the kind of like classical instrument contemporary setting? Or does it come from any other kind of encouragement? Or
Look, I think it probably stems from my love of film, and my love for music in film.
Mhm.
I tend to probably gravitate towards projects that I know that are going to fuse those elements together. Um, Most definitely. And I think, I mean, music, while it speaks wonderfully on its own, I think it's so powerful when
Mhm.
when you're intersect, you're crossing over with other art forms
Mhm.
as well. So, and it just me, I feel like it gives the music a greater purpose as well, as a greater sense of intent for the sounds that are being produced too. When you have this cross section of influences. Yeah, for
That
sure.
you studied film production as well, and
That was a big component of. I did a different degree later
Mhm.
on in my life. So in my 30s, I went back to study contemporary music. So
Okay.
I began my training at the Victorian College of the Arts in the classical degree, and then I left that to pursue more contemporary music and to be able to play in bands with others and stuff. So, but it was a huge component in third year where we studied film composition and
Mhm.
film production. So I was able to learn all about, why music is in film, and the various degrees and levels of emotion and all of that kind of stuff that goes into scoring for a film. And so with that knowledge, I was able to then start composing music for local theatre plays, for people's short films here in Melbourne as well. So it kind of provided an avenue for me that I wouldn't have ordinarily
Mhm.
taken had I not
Oh,
learned those
okay.
subjects at school.
Sure. So do you
So
have like a favorite movie soundtrack, for instance?
um, I think anything composed by Thomas Newman, I
Okay.
think he's my go-to guy.
Hmm.
So he scored films like American Beauty,
Hmm.
The Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption, just to name a few. So he's got this incredible. You know how there are some composers, they have this, when you hear them, you know it's
No, it's
them.
them. Yeah.
They have this
Hmm.
this complete style and sound that is completely their own. So and Thomas Newman, really explores that idea of these open fourths and open fifths and this really big, expansive, wide but warm sound.
Hmm.
And I feel like because the cello, I feel like is similar in its approach. It has this capability to be able to play these beautiful long fifth double stops, these drone type kind of pedal tones, and then you can play melodies over the top. And I feel like there is a connection there for
Hmm.
me anyway with the cello and with the way Thomas Newman composes for film. So
Okay. Last but not least, I was really curious about Anita's personal music choices. In other words, what she listens to when she's not really working. And it turns out her taste is pretty eclectic, especially that she also lives with a musician whose style doesn't have much to do with classical instruments.
I think I have pretty broad taste in music. I love listening to my um, local heroes. So Nat Barch, who's a beautiful neoclassical composer and pianist, and Luke Howard, who is also a similar category. But I appreciate prog rock. For instance, a good friend of mine, Michael Mills, plays in a band with Toe Hider called Toe Hider, and it's the most phenomenal, eclectic mix of sounds and genres all put into one. It's and so technically crazy music. I could never play that music. His voice is incredible. He's got this powerhouse of a voice, and it just ticks all the boxes for, you know, such well crafted, well thought out compositions, basically. So he's Toe Hider is a band to look out for.
Okay.
But I also listen to other sort of more minimalist classical composers like Max Richter. He's a favorite of mine. And also, I mean, we have such a wealth of great talent here in Melbourne. I'm always listening to, you know, friends' albums. Mindy Meng Wang has got such a category, a catalogue of music, where she's collaborated with some of, I think, some world-class musicians here in Melbourne and Tasmania as well. So, yeah, I'm just spoilt for choice, really, as to how and when and why I listen to music. So yeah, but time and time again, I do come back to film score music. It's some of the most emotional sounding music around, and I just love it.
I thought you were gonna say, oh, I listen to heavy metal, you know, just to discover.
No, not at all. But my partner Nick Delaney, he's heavily or has heavy roots in metal music. So that's often on in the background at home too. So I think I've, you know, absorbed some of those sounds as well, and I can appreciate the technical craziness you need to have as a musician to be able to produce that kind of music. It's quite phenomenal, phenomenal, and I have full and utter respect for people who can do that.
But then you're an interesting couple, because I didn't know he was into that kind of genre of music. So you're a classical instrument, contemporary setting, and then heavy metal is on a completely different spectrum of music. So you kind of complement each other, I suppose, when it comes to music.
Yeah, I guess, I tell him to kind of take it easy and just play whatever feels right, man. And he's like, no, that maybe that phrase needs to be a little shorter, or that note needs to be a little longer, or so we definitely complement each other wonderfully, I think, in both of our abilities to be honed into the thing that we love to do the most. So
do you kind of judge your music or evaluate it when you're kind of composing new music? Would you play it for Nick and say do you think it's okay? Do you think I should?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll often ask him his advice, especially when I'm thinking about the structure of my composition. So I'm just like, are you getting bored here? Or are you getting, can you perhaps give me some advice on how to make those sections a little more interesting when they change or sort of intersect. So yeah, definitely. He's been a great help for me in that respect. And yeah, I guess I can give him advice sometimes too when things are getting a little too technical or a little too maths, maths brain. Go, hey, just chill out a bit.
And that, dear listeners, is the end of this chat, for good. Thanks heaps to Anita Quayle, who has taught me more about the cello than my high school teacher. I hope you've also changed your perception about this classical music instrument, and that you'll catch Anita with one of her many projects in Melbourne or elsewhere to see the modern magic she does with it up close. Check out the episode notes for resources and links to some of the things and artists we've chatted about. Make sure to give Anita a follow on her socials as well. And have a listen to previous conversations from Season 1 before new episodes become available next week. And if you don't want to miss any of them, hit that subscribe or follow button now, okay? Oh, and have I mentioned that I'm on Patreon now as well? I'm chucking the link to it in the episode notes in case you're feeling generous today. But regardless of whether you support me on that platform or not, I'll still be eagerly awaiting you here on air next Tuesday. And before you go, after I finish talking, please have a listen to one of Anita's songs. Have a good remainder of the week. Ciao!